They say neighborhoods are supposed to feel safe, but mine turned into a battlefield the day my HOA president decided she controlled me with threats. What she didn't realize was that sending bikers after me was the biggest mistake of her life. Before we dive in, let me know which country you're watching from. Today, let's see how far the story travels. It all started with Marlene Harding, the woman who treats our HOA like her personal empire. She showed up unannounced on my property one morning, standing in front of my barn like she owned the place. Her pastel windbreaker was zipped to the chin, clipboard clutched in her hand, and that little fake smile she always wore plastered across her face. "You know," she said, her tone sugar-coated but sharp. "Underneath that barn equipment of yours really drags down the neighborhood aesthetic. Some of us are starting to think you don't respect the community." I didn't even bother moving. "It's a ranch, Marlene. That equipment keeps this land running." Her smile didn't break. "Communities only work when everyone follows the rules. Ignore them long enough and people might think you don't belong here." That word belong wasn't about bylaws. It was about power. At the next HOA meeting, I decided enough was enough. Folding chairs lined up, projector screen glowing with Marlene's bullet points about community harmony. I stood up mid-sentence. "Marlene," I said, holding up the violation notice she'd sent me, "since when does this HOA have a Director of Security Enforcement? Because that's the title right under your signature." The room shifted instantly. Neighbors glanced at each other, confused. I caught whispers in the back. Marlene froze for just a second, then recovered. "It's a necessary position," she said smoothly, "for handling difficult residents." "That's not in the bylaws," I shot back. "An HOA rules don't give you the right to invent new authority." You could have heard a pin drop. Then Marlene slammed her folder closed, her eyes narrowing like a predator sizing up prey. "You'll regret this," she hissed before storming out. And that's when it escalated. The next morning, my mailbox was bent at a precise angle. Not smashed, not vandalized, just bent. A message. Later, I found heavy boot prints cutting across my pasture, and by sundown someone had nailed a black carved skull charm onto my barn door. It wasn't graffiti. It wasn't random. It was a marker, the kind used by outlaw biker crews. At dawn the following day, I heard them before I saw them. 6 motorcycles gliding past my gate in single file, engines rumbling. Lo, no one looked at me. No one waved. They didn't have to. This wasn't intimidation. It was decoration. If you're enjoying this HOA story so far, like and subscribe because the story is only going to get better. The morning after the bikers circled my property, I walked straight into the HOA meeting. The tension in the room was thick. Neighbors avoided my eyes, whispering under their breath. Marlene sat at the head of the folding table like a queen on her throne, sipping water as if nothing had happened. I didn't wait for her agenda to start. Cut the act. "Marlene, who are the bikers?" Her smile barely twitched. "Excuse me, the 6 men on motorcycles that paraded past my land. Yesterday, they didn't just wander here. They were sent by you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. One older man muttered, "I saw them too." Marlene leaned forward, voice dropping. "This community has expectations. When you ignore them, sometimes people outside the bylaws take notice." That right there was the crack I needed. You just admitted to it. You're conspiring to intimidate a homeowner. That's a crime under 18 U.S. Code 241. And having them trespass on my land, that's 18 U.S. Code 2411 in state level trespassing laws. Stacked on top, she shifted in her chair, but the smugness didn't fade. Call it what you want. Around here, nobody's going to side with you over the board. The way she said board made my stomach tighten. This wasn't just her. She had enablers, maybe even scared ones. I slammed my violation notice down on the table. This ends now, or the sheriff hears every word you just said. Her eyes flickered, the first real crack in her armor, but instead of backing down, she doubled down. Fine. You want to fight? You'll get one. Just don't cry when you can't handle the consequences. I walked out before she could finish, because consequences were already parked at my gate. That afternoon, the bikers were back, this time dismounting black leather jackets, patches stitched across their backs, boots crunching on the gravel like war drums. One of them, a broad man with a scar down his cheek, spat on my driveway. You Harding? He growled. No, I said evenly. I own this land. You're trespassing. Scarface smirked. Not for long. HOA says you're done here. My fists clenched, but I kept my voice level. Let me explain something to you. Under Texas Penal Code 30.05, you step 1 foot past that fence line after being told to leave, and you're looking at a criminal trespass charge. And if you're acting on her behalf, that's conspiracy, both federal and state law. You ready for that? They laugh, but not with their eyes. These weren't punks. They were mercs paid muscle. And in that moment, I knew Marlene hadn't just crossed a line. She declared war. I turned back toward the house, calm as ever, because if she wanted a war, she picked the wrong man to start one with. The bikers didn't just leave. They camped at the end of my road like vultures, engines rumbling low, letting everyone know they weren't going anywhere. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, afraid to get involved. And Marlene, she strutted around with sunglasses and that smug grin, acting like she had the whole neighborhood on a leash. That was the last straw. I wasn't just some guy they could intimidate. I'd commanded men in combat zones, dealt with worse than patched up thugs. So I made a call, not to the sheriff, not to the county. I called my brothers from Delta, men I bled with, men who didn't need explanations. By noon the next day, 3 black trucks rolled down my driveway. Out stepped my old platoon. Civilian clothes, but the same deadly focus. Marlene was on her porch when she saw them, and for the first time, her confidence cracked. You can't bring your army here, she shouted, her voice shrill. It's not an army, I called back. It's family. And unlike your hired thugs, they're here legally. The bikers rev their engines, trying to puff up. My men didn't flinch. One of them, Ramirez, leaned in and muttered, Want us to handle this the usual way? Hold, I said loud enough for the bikers to hear. We do this by the book. But Scarface and his crew weren't listening. They advanced past the fence, boots crunching gravel, crossing that legal line I had warned them about. That was it. I moved first, stepped in, caught Scarface by the wrist as he swung, twisted, and drove him into the dirt. His growl turned into a grunt as I locked him down. Another rushed me, but a knee to the gut folded him, and I sent him sprawling with a hip throw.